What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over what's happened in about the past week or so. So major news out of camp, along with the biggest changes to ADPs, which of course is heavily influenced by the news out of camps. Remember that I can only do these sorts of videos a few times each season, but you can always see my up-to-date take on the latest news and what the latest news is for free by just looking at the trending players page on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And if you want to see exactly where I have every single player ranked, along with their projections, exclusive video content, and access to our Discord, where you can ask me questions directly, then all you got to do is sign up for membership on the website. Also, I'm recording this Tuesday morning. It goes out Wednesday morning, so there will for sure be news that happens during the day on Tuesday, so know that. And if something big happens, well, we just went over where you can see my updated take. So we will get into the news in a second, but first, have to start things off as usual, the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was who was the oldest tight end to catch a touchdown pass last season. The answer is Jason Witten. Antonio P was the first to get that right on YouTube, and @NateCharter4 was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Adams and Diggs had the most receiving yards from week 9 on last season, but who was third? All right, so first up, I want to go over the 10 players that have risen and fallen the most this last week. That'll give us a really good start on the news, and then after that, we'll go over some things that you should know about players that hasn't necessarily affected ADPs yet, but should impact our views on them, or at least could impact our views on them. So we'll start off with the risers. And one quick note before I do that, you can see all of this data for free on the website as well too. Just go to the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, click the ADP tab, and then you can see who's moved up and down the most this last week, along with where each player is currently ranked on different sites like ESPN, Yahoo, NFL, where they're going on Underdog, FFPC, all of that, again, 100% free. So back to the risers. Number 1 this last week is Randall Cobb. He's gone up 20 spots to about the mid 13th round. When I say rounds here, I'm going to be talking about 12-team leagues. This, of course, comes after he's traded to the Packers. You know, your ADP is going to go up when that happens, especially when you're leaving Houston. I do think that he's sort of maxed out in his 13th round kind of range. Again, like mid 13th round. He is still a fairly low upside option. And even if there were injuries on this team, Adams goes down, he's never going to be a target hog. He's never going to be a guy that rises to be a wide receiver 1, even probably a wide receiver 2 this season. I do think he's a fine pick in that 12th, 13th, 14th round range, but he's not someone that I'm really going after. There are better, higher upside picks to make in that range, so it's fine. It's not a bad pick where he's going. I'm just probably not going to make it. Damien Williams has seen his ADP rise 20 spots as well into the late 15th round. People are starting to realize that Cohen is just not healthy and that Williams is likely going to fill that role while Cohen is limited. Williams has also been productive, on the ground when he was a starter, and honestly, he's the better handcuff, right? If you're thinking about a handcuff to David Montgomery, you don't want Cohen. He's never going to get early down work. You'd want a guy like Williams, who if Montgomery went down, he can pass catch, but he can also get work on the ground, get work at the goal line. I do like Williams in this range. I expect his ADP to continue rising, maybe into the 13th or 14th round, especially if news keeps being negative around Cohen. But basically just know what he is, right? He's not a guy that's going to take over David Montgomery's role. Just he's a guy that is a really nice handcuff. And in Underdog, if you're looking some running backs early, then abandoning it for a while, and you're taking someone who's going to have some sort of role, going to have some sort of pass catching role, and has some upside if there's an injury, I think that's a really good pick. Just know that it's not someone that's going to break out without an injury. Rashaad Penny has risen into the early 15th round. He's up 19 spots this last week since he finally looks healthy. And we're getting pretty positive news about not only the running backs for Seattle, but really their entire offense. Sounds like they might go more up-tempo than in recent seasons. And there's just been some hype around how it's going to be a fantasy-friendly offense for the running backs. I will say this. It's best not to trust everything that Seattle says. They've talked up Penny before. They've said that they'll play fast before and that they'll go more pass heavy, but it never has just like really worked out that way. Some teams I trust and some I don't. And Seattle is one of the teams I just really don't trust when they speak. So until I see some sort of evidence that they'll be playing fast this year, some sort of evidence that like Penny's actually going to get a big role and stay healthy, like I'm just going to assume that like the same thing's going to happen. They're going to be a pretty run heavy team. They're not going to let Russ throw the ball, 40 times a game, and that Carson's the starter and Penny's the backup. So that's basically what it is. Like if Carson goes down, I still expect some sort of committee. I think Penny will have a role while Carson's healthy, but it'll be very, very small. I'll say he's a very similar pick to Damien Williams, just that he's going to have less of a passing game role. So when you look at a site like Underdog and we're looking for at least some sort of value while the starter's healthy, I don't think Penny's going to have all that much value because his work is mostly going to come on the ground, and I just don't see him being viable. So a fine handcuff if you want to make it, but if his ADP like rises really fast, I'd rather Williams than Penny. Bryan Edwards has seen his ADP just like skyrocket this summer. He's up another 16 spots into the late 12th round now on Underdog. The reports out of camp have been really, really positive. He's been running ahead of John Brown. It clearly looks like he's going to be used ahead of John Brown, and he's apparently looked very, very good. He's looked like what we thought he could be when he came on to the team as a rookie last season. Waller's, of course, going to be used as a top target ahead of Bryan Edwards, but you guys have known for, I would say, well over a year now that like I don't think Ruggs is ever going to be like a true number one, and I do think that Bryan Edwards is going to be better than him. Does that happen this season or maybe next year, the year after? I don't 100% know, but I do think it's absolutely possible that Bryan Edwards surpasses Henry Ruggs as the team's number one wide receiver this season. With that being said, be careful with his ADP. Like it's already into the 12th round. That's totally fine. That's the range where we take upside picks. And if you feel good about Edwards, go for it in that range. But if he starts to pick up a lot of steam in the preseason, as we work through camps, like if he creeps into the 9th or 10th round, we're starting to get into a situation where like he needs to be the team's number one, because again, Waller's still the number one option, so he'd be like the number two. If we're getting to that sort of situation where he needs to be the number one, now I'm probably hopping off, even though I think he's going to be better than Ruggs this season. But 12th round, totally still good with that. Darrell Henderson has risen into the late 4th round. Really doesn't seem like they're going to bring in another running back, so the rise makes complete sense. If you remember back to when this news first broke, that Akers was going to miss the entire season with the Achilles injury, my projections had Henderson as a mid-4th round pick, which I then nerfed down to make him more of like a late 4th to early 5th round pick because I wasn't comfortable with him, and like it was like the early to mid 4th round. I have now taken that discount off since it now does seem like they're just not going to bring someone in. So he's back being like an early to mid 4th round pick. It depends, of course, on the rankings. It's going to be different for all the rankings. I'm kind of talking about half PPR right now. I still don't think they're going to like feature him, but he should get a ton of touches, as many touches as he can handle while staying healthy. Some of these touches will be at the goal line. Some of these touches will be in the receiving game. And because he's going to contribute in like every single area for a very, very good offense, I think that he is worth a 4th round pick. So I think this rise makes sense. The final riser we'll go over today is Elijah Moore. Said that a little weird the first time. I'm not sure that any player, I'm trying to think, I don't think any player has received as much hype as Moore has these last few weeks. I'm really trying to remember, and I don't think anyone has. It's honestly really unfortunate because like I think he's a great player with a ton of upside. It's just like he's already into the 8th round on Underdog, and no bad news has come out. So everyone that's going to be like, right now is basically the time where a ton of casual fans jump on and they start doing drafts, they start looking at news, and everything about Moore has been positive. So I would not be shocked if he climbs into the 7th round, climbs into the late 6th round, and now you're in a situation where you're like, There's no way, right? It's still going to be a situation where they're going to use Moore, but they're going to use Corey Davis. They're going to use Keelan Cole. They're going to use Jamison Crowder. And let's be honest, Zach Wilson has not proved himself yet. And it's not like he was some like incredible prospect coming out where we were like, he's absolutely going to smash as a rookie. I think he's good, but I don't think he's going to smash as a rookie, right? His peak is not going to come this season. It's still difficult for rookies to support multiple fantasy relevant players, especially when like they're going to clearly spread the ball. They're going to be a rotation at wide receiver, a rotation at running back. And so if Moore is going to keep rising, like his ADP is getting kind of crazy. I have him as a late 9th round pick. I think that is absolutely correct. I think that's the best spot to take him. And so as he's moving into the 8th and the 7th round, unless we get an injury, I can't justify his rise this much, and I do believe it's going to continue to rise. On to the fallers, where we will start off with, of course, Michael Thomas. There's a bit of drama brewing in New Orleans around Michael Thomas. So first, the story drops. Of course, you guys know like he had surgery in, was it June or July? Sometime like, I don't know, like a month or two ago. And it was like, everyone was like, why? Like you were clearly hurt last season. Why did the surgery not happen at the beginning of the offseason so you'd be good to go now? Why would you delay the surgery and then now you might miss the first 2 months of the season? I mean, he might not come back until week 8. A story drops where apparently he like ghosted the Saints medical staff and then shows up to camp like clearly still injured, and that's what delayed the surgery. And everyone was like, oh, Michael Thomas, you're an idiot. And then we see Michael Thomas tweet, put on Instagram, I forget which one it was, basically calling out the medical staff without actually saying anything bad about him. He was basically like, if people heard my side of the story, like everything will be flipped, but I'm not going to tell my side of the story. So there's something that happened there. There's some sort of disconnect between him and the medical staff. I don't know what it is. We will absolutely find out. I promise there's going to be a story that's dropped sometime this season about what happened there. But the situation for me is basically that the drop makes sense. He's going now in the late 7th round because people are realizing that like it is very possible he's not back until like week 8. And that's a very long time to not have a player. His value basically depends on your league. Like, do you have an IR spot? Do you have like 7 or 8 bench spots? Because if either of those are true, he's much more viable. You can put him in the IR spot. He's probably the only person you're putting in that spot for the first few weeks, so it's not hurting you that much. You got 7, 8 bench spots. You can afford to waste one of them on effectively an IR spot. But if you have no IR and only 5 bench spots, and you're going to waste one of them on Michael Thomas not playing for the first half of the season, that could really, really hurt you even in the 7th round. So absolutely just depends on your format, your risk tolerance, how well you think you're going to do in the league. If you think you're crushing the draft and you're like, I'm making playoffs, and you get to the 7th round and Michael Thomas is there and you want to take a shot, go for it. I'm probably not going to in a league that I care about a lot, because even when he comes back, he'll be coming back off of this surgery. He will have not, had a lot of time with whoever the quarterback ends up being, whether it's Hill, whether it's Winston. And so for me, I'm avoiding, but I understand if you want to take a shot. He's still a very talented player. Kenny Golladay has seen his ADP drop into the 6th round. This is obviously because he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, like right now, not during the season, with a hamstring injury. Although I say that, we don't know. Hamstring injuries can definitely be worse than players let on. They can be easily aggravated. So he could come back in 2 to 3 weeks, but then, aggravate the injury. It's another month after that. You never, ever, ever want your players getting hamstring injuries, especially early in the season. Those things linger. I didn't like Golladay before, so I'm not going to like him now that he's missing a ton of time in camp. And honestly, the reports were not very good about how he was performing in camp even before this. Marquise Brown is the same way. I wasn't super excited to draft him before the injury. Now he hurts his hamstring. Even though he's dropped into the late 8th round, I'm still not taking him as he recovers from this. He's a speed receiver. I don't want my speed receivers having hamstring problems. We've seen Joe Burrow's ADP drop around 10 spots. He's now going in the early 10th round. The current reports at a camp are not good. He's been struggling. Not only have his receivers not been getting open, but apparently Burrow has just looked bad, right? Easy throws are falling short. They're getting broken up, and he just doesn't look comfortable. They said it's like a mental problem, but like something is clearly wrong. There are also reports that like Jamar Chase looks good, but not like the clear alpha that we know he's going to be someday. I do think that his ADP may have climbed a little bit too far. You guys see, I don't take him all that often in these mock drafts. He's already into the mid-4th round. I have him ranked as a mid-5th round pick, so I like him in that range. But if he's going in the 4th round, like, I would prefer just wait a little bit, take T. Higgins, wait a little bit more, take Tyler Boyd if you want access to this offense. But right now, it kind of seems like maybe you don't want access right now, and maybe the best course of action is, if you believe in the Bengals, it's kind of looking like they're going to start the season slow. And so maybe someone takes Chase in the 4th round. He's pretty bad for the first few weeks because, I mean, even Justin Jefferson didn't go off to start last season. We were saying you need to be trading for Jefferson. He's clearly going to break out. And then he does later in the season. But remember, rookies don't just like break out necessarily in week 1, week 2, week 3. It takes them some time sometimes, especially if you have a situation where like the Bengals offense kind of looks like it's going to start off a little rusty. So is your best bet to trade for Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd after the team starts very, very slow, but we know it's going to be a high volume passing attack. We know these players are talented. We know probably at some point in the season they're going to put it all together and be good. Maybe that's the best bet, is to not draft them, but trade for them when the season starts out, not how their owners were expecting. Other notable ADP drops are from Deshaun Watson and the entire Colts team, basically. We'll do Watson first. My take on this is that nobody knows. So if you have a lean, then do what you believe is going to happen. If you think he plays and that he's like available late in your draft, go for it. If you really think he's playing this season, he's available super late, take him. If you don't think he plays, well, don't draft him, right? This one just comes down to your own risk tolerance and kind of what I said before, like how deep is your bench? You only have 5 bench spots and you're, not someone who wants to take a ton of risk, don't draft Deshaun Watson, okay? But if you're someone who loves assuming risk because you think the upside is there, you've got like 7, 8 bench spots, go for it, right? I've heard that there's just no way he's playing for the Texans this season, but he's also been practicing. He's then not going to play in the preseason game. Like, there are so many conflicting reports that we have no idea. I don't think he's going to play for the Texans, but does that mean he's getting traded? I honestly don't know. I don't think anyone knows. Until we see a Schefter report on what is happening, we do not know. And so you just got to go with what you think is going to happen. As for the Colts, and I'm just not going to do it. Like, I'm just not going to draft him. As for the Colts, people are absolutely panicking. We see Wentz and Quentin Nelson both have the same surgery, both expected to miss 5 to 12 weeks, although that was when the surgeries happened. It's less than that now. Again, that's like as of early August. It's more like mid-August right now. That has caused Carson's ADP to drop into the 19th round, basically just not being taken. Hilton is going now in the 14th, Pittman in the 9th, Campbell also going the 14th, like right next to Hilton. Jonathan Taylor is down to 17th overall. I am still fading Hilton this season. I was before, I still am now. The injury definitely also makes Paris Campbell a little bit less appealing, so maybe we're not drafting both of those guys. Maybe they're guys that at some point in the season we can stream off waivers, but we're probably not drafting them anymore. But I still think that like people are shying away from Pittman and Jonathan Taylor a little bit too much. This team might honestly get stomped over the first month or so, but Pittman is still the #1 wide receiver, and going really, really late. Like, he's going later than a lot of teams' wide receiver 2s, maybe some teams' wide receiver 3s. And Wentz is not going to miss the whole season. I get it if Wentz was done for the year, but he could be back pretty early in the season, and you're still getting a #1 wide receiver, a red zone threat, someone that has a lot of upside. They're also extremely likely to feature Jonathan Taylor now, since, they're forced to open the season with a pretty tough schedule, right? Seattle, the Rams, the Titans, the Dolphins. They're not going to win those games in like a shootout through the air. They know that, okay? Especially with not having Wentz likely, I would say for all those games, it's likely he doesn't play. So they're going to go run heavy. They're going to play slow. They're going to give Jonathan Taylor a ton of carries. When they get inside the 10-yard line, it's basically going to be a ton of carries to Jonathan Taylor because they're not going to trust the quarterbacks to throw the ball when they're playing pretty good defenses. I mean, these aren't all elite defenses, but like, imagine the game against the Rams. They're at the 7-yard line. It's 1st and goal from the 7. Do you really think they're going to be like, all right, Eason, like, drop back, we're throwing fades to Michael Pittman, right? For the early part of the season, you know for a fact that whenever they get close, Jonathan Taylor is getting a carry. Now, the defense knows that too, so he's not going to be super efficient. But I promise you, if they can at least approach 20 points, Jonathan Taylor is probably scoring a touchdown. And every single week that Carson Wentz is not on the field. Okay, they're not going to trust Eason when they get really, really close. So Taylor's going to have like 20, 25 carries. He's going to get a ton of touchdowns probably in this time. And I just think that like getting him at like where he's going right now, 17th overall, and it keeps dropping, we're getting close to a situation where you can take a top 4 running back and then take Jonathan Taylor. And now what happens if I've paired Dalvin Cook with Jonathan Taylor and Wentz comes back in week 4, and now Taylor's probably a top 7 running back, and now I have 2 top 7 running backs? That is very, very scary, because then we can implement the strategy we like, the anchor running back strategy, but like modify it. So now you have Cook and Jonathan Taylor. Now you're taking tight ends, quarterbacks, wide receivers, and you're like loaded everywhere. It's not a bad bet. So if he's going to push into the late 2nd round, I really, really think he's someone we're still attacking, because he's going to be heavily involved this season, no matter who is the quarterback. That's it for risers and fallers. I want to close by like briefly touching on other bits of important news that, again, haven't necessarily affected ADPs. Michael Gallup has been seeing a lot of playing time in camp from the slot. This is big if they do choose to move him around more, because last season, remember, he was only playing on the outside, only getting looks deeper downfield. That made him a very high variance play. And it honestly does limit his ceiling, because you know he's not getting these easy targets. He's not building reception floors. Well, now he's going to have a higher floor and a higher ceiling, because if he's getting some of these easy looks, now when he hits deep, he's pairing that deep touchdown with a few easy receptions. That raises his floor and his ceiling. Marquez Callaway has basically been the best wide receiver in the Saints camp. Again, I am not, at this point, a Traquan Smith believer. I never think he's going to be a thing in the league. People are going to be taking him probably as the first wide receiver for the Saints, but Callaway has been their best wide receiver. It'll definitely be important to like truly figure out who is going to lead the wide receiver core in targets. But honestly, it's what? It's going to be Kamara first, Troutman's going to be involved, and then it's probably going to be a rotation after that. So I'm not really touching this wide receiver core unless I'm in like a 14 or 16 team league. But for those of you in those leagues, Callaway's probably the guy you should be looking at, because he's also cheaper than Traquan Smith. Barkley has returned to practice. He is obviously still limited, right? They're not allowing him to just get hit, get tackled a bunch. And he's still uncertain for week 1. But we need to watch this one, obviously. Like, his health has massive implications, so we need to stay on top of it. I think we're going to learn a lot these next like 2 weeks. But as of right now, I'm treating him exactly the same as before. If we somehow got confirmation that he's fully healthy 100% in week 1, he's a top 5 pick. I don't know exactly where. He'd probably be 3rd overall. But we're not going to get that confirmation. And so since his health is a question mark, he's a late 1st round pick for me. Rashad Bateman, he missed some time with muscle tightness, right when he was, building steam in camp. But he is back at practice now, so that is good. He looks fine. Terrace Marshall looks like he's going to win the number 3 job for the Panthers. He is a fantastic late round sleeper. His ADP is unfortunately rising, but he remains absolutely a target for me. Speaking of the Panthers, or I guess old Panthers players, no timetable for Curtis Samuel's return. Of course, he leaves the Panthers and joins the football team this offseason, and so you want to have him build chemistry with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with that team, with that offense. He's missed a lot of time. And they're obviously, they don't seem concerned, so we shouldn't be overly concerned with the injury. But, even if it's, okay, he's good to go in week 1, he's missing very, very valuable time. And so I have dropped him in the rankings. Chark had surgery to repair a broken finger, but he should be good to go to start the season. Honestly, before the surgery, he was already my 3rd favorite Jaguars wide receiver. So this news doesn't really change anything for me. It makes him a better value for people who like him. But personally, I would prefer to draft LaVisca. I prefer to draft Marvin Jones. I'm not really on the Chark bandwagon this season. Dak has been making some light throws. There is still a very long time before week 1, and so I have not changed the rankings on any Dallas players because of this injury. If he suffers any sort of setback, then I will be doing that. but it really just seems like they're being super cautious and that he's going to be fine in week 1. They're going to be an elite offense, so I'm not changing rankings. Jalen Waddle has been performing really, really nicely in camp, and I honestly haven't heard much about Parker, about Fuller. They, of course, have dealt with some injuries, so that's probably why, but honestly, Waddle's the one getting a ton of hype. I'm still mostly avoiding their pass catchers. I think that they're going to spread the ball out a ton. They're going to use tight ends. They're going to use running backs. And so it's going to be difficult for someone from the wide receiver core to be a consistent option for us. But if I'm targeting anyone, it's Waddle. And I'm honestly very fine doing it in best ball because he's the one that's most likely to get the down the field work. And I want someone, if there's going to be limited volume, I want the person getting downfield work because they can hit unlimited volume. I don't really want Parker because he's probably not going to hit if he's not getting a ton of targets. Miles Sanders has struggled with drops in camp, and it does seem like Boston Scott is going to get some early down work mixed in with some receiving down work, and that Gainwell is going to be involved in the receiving game. I am fine taking a chance on Gainwell late, especially in full PPR or on Underdog, but for the most part, I'm avoiding this backfield entirely. I'm not on the Boston Scott train. I'm definitely not drafting Miles Sanders right now at his current ADP. But Gainwell would be the one that I'd be okay with, but not jumping up and down to get. If you're in like a normal redraft, like a 12-team league, half PPR scoring, I'm probably just not touching anyone. Sutton is looking a lot better now, which is really, really good. We were very concerned a little while ago, maybe like a month ago, with how he was recovering from the ACL, because reports were not good about a month ago about how he was recovering. Right now, it seems like he's good to go. He's healthy. Reports are he looks very good. And so we can go back to considering him a really nice high upside option in the middle rounds. You guys may have saw Justin Jefferson get hurt. It was an AC joint sprain. Obviously, we don't want shoulder injuries, but it is basically best case scenario. It came out that he was day-to-day as of August 6th. And he's going to have a good amount of time to recover. Obviously, shoulder injuries are going to linger into the season, so he might have this affect him for the entire year, but it's not a major injury. He avoided that, and so I'm not adjusting the rankings at all. It's something to keep in the back of our minds that he might be playing through a little bit of pain, but the injury was very, very minor, and so he should be totally fine. Trey Lance has been fantastic in camp, but Jimmy G has also been pretty good. At this point, I expect Jimmy G to be the week 1 starter. I think that over the first month, they're going to mix in Lance on designed run plays to kind of get him some looks, but also just to create mismatches that Jimmy G can't create, kind of like how they used Taysom Hill in New Orleans. But I still expect that basically the staff is going to look at this and be like, yes, we're not starting him in week 1 because he still needs time to learn the playbook. He still needs time to develop. But at some point in the season, they understand, they drafted him because of the mismatches he creates in the running game. And there's going to be a situation where they're like, listen, Jimmy G, you're good, but Trey Lance fits that offense perfectly. They're going to be probably the best running game in the NFL. Maybe Baltimore will be better, but it'll be Baltimore and San Fran as the 2 best run games in the NFL. And that is unlocked with Lance, not with Jimmy G. So I still expect Lance to be the starter at some point. I expect him to be a quarterback 1 when he is the starter. So yes, I'm still taking him late in drafts, but understand that honestly for the first month, I expect Jimmy G to be the starter. Last bit of news is probably that Hunter Henry is going to miss a few weeks with a shoulder injury. The Patriots don't seem super concerned, but they also don't tell us everything usually. This is one to watch, though, because this offense is going to be friendly to tight ends, right? They're going to do a lot of 2 tight end sets. Maybe when one of them's hurt, they don't do as many 2 tight end sets, but they're going to feature the tight end in the passing game. And so if John was the only healthy one, he's going to be a really nice streaming option for us early in the season. As of right now, it does seem like Hunter Henry is going to be fine, though. And so they're both just fine dart throws late in drafts. But if they're lying to us, and if this injury is worse than they're letting on, then Jonnu Smith could be someone we're looking at to stream early in the season. That brings us through the news this last week. I'm sure there are other little bits that I missed, but those were the major bits of news. There will definitely be news that comes out after I record before it's uploaded tomorrow. But remember, you can always get my latest take on all the important news by just looking at the trending players page on our site. And if you want to see exactly where I have every player ranked, along with my projections, risk grades, targets, avoids, sleepers, individual breakdowns, and a whole lot more, you can see all of that at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.